Hi people, it's Archivist here, and today we're going to be talking about the Call of Duty Modern Warfare beta. But I really wanted to focus on the aspect of this being a beta for just a moment here, because I think people forget that. They think that this is more like a VIP early access, like Gears of War 5's early access, where the game is supposed to be done and that it's supposed to have no bugs, no issues, and that all gameplay mechanics are meant to be 100% set in stone and ready for the live release. Now, I actually, although you may interpret my tone as being against that of the player base, I actually don't do that. I completely blame this mentality on the marketers, on the publishers, because they have changed betas, in terms of the overall narrative at least, from being something that was used to test a game as it's coming together, to shape where it's going and to fix bugs, into something where it is meant to be early access and you're supposed to be enjoying it and hyped for it. In reality, that's not what betas were traditionally for, but publishers have sort of hijacked their purpose a little bit and commercialized them, indeed giving early access to them if you pre-order the game. If you do that, of course, you can cancel, which I'd recommend you do if you didn't care for this beta. However, I do blame the publishers for making betas out to be something that they're not. They're supposed to be times to test and to QA. But as a player base, we also need to not be taken in by what Activision are trying to portray this as being, and really focus on giving not just feedback, but quality feedback. What does it make sense to say? So a good example of something that's worth saying, if you're having a bad time in the beta, maybe you're getting killed a lot, is to say that I am getting killed a lot. I feel as if the spawning in the game is too random, too sporadic, and it's too hard to anticipate the enemy position. A bad way to say that would be to say that this game is too hard, Infinity would suck, and I want to go back to Black Ops 4, whatever. That's not a good way. If you want to give feedback, I would highly recommend making it in a non-emotive way. Focus on making it in a way that's relatively easy to digest, right? Because that's the feedback that will be listened to. Create a reasoned argument, and if you do that, there is a fair chance that it will be listened to, and I would encourage you to make such feedback because betas are designed to shape the final product. So this is where you should absolutely be giving feedback. And also something I would say is please do not try to shut down other people who are just giving their opinion on the game. This has been a real issue with the minimap thing, where people have given their opinion on why it should be there, some why it shouldn't be there, and I would massively encourage people to say why it should be there, why it shouldn't be there, because there are valid reasons on both sides. But especially if you look at things like the subreddit, where a lot of the feedback is actually being read by the developers, it's becoming almost confrontational between people on both sides, where it's becoming more emotive and less objective in terms of the feedback now. And it's becoming more about Infinity Ward apparently caving to pressure and changing things, when in reality they are merely responding to feedback. And all they can do, because they're only human, is respond to the feedback that seems to be the most prominent. So if it appears that most people want the minimap to come back, they will bring it back. If they think that most people want it to go, then it will go, because ultimately video games in the modern era are a business. To some extent, look, they're clever, they know what they're doing. They know they also can't be ruled by a committee, because they can't just let the community 100% shape the experience, because otherwise it wouldn't have a unique identity. And often things that do try to appeal to everyone can get so spread out that they actually end up appealing to no one. I would describe Battlefield 5 as a game that did that, where it tried to go in so many different directions that no one direction was particularly that good. Even though it's a decent game, but yeah, it's just not exceptional as a result. So this is the time in the beta to be giving feedback, and please don't discourage others from giving feedback. I mean, if it's really emotive, nonsensical, angry feedback, maybe then, but if someone's just giving a well-reasoned argument, this is the time to do it. And the best thing to do if you see that is to give a well-reasoned argument in response, and don't get too aggravated about it, because if you follow some of these threads, it's seriously, it can start out with a really strong reason as to why something should be a certain way, and you get to the bottom and it's just people saying, oh, did I trigger you? You triggered me. Apparently everyone's triggering each other. Apparently the way conversation works now is that it's just a consecutive number of triggers. But that aside, my thoughts on the beta as they continue is that what I see as being a defining aspect of this game is that they want your head on a swivel, constantly looking in all directions and moving carefully and moving at a slower pace. That is not to say that you can't run around like a maniac, jumping about and shooting people, and indeed I have seen people being successful in doing that. However, you're gambling with that because there are so many angles that you can get shot from in most positions in this game that if you just run around like that and give yourself away easily, you're definitely setting yourself out to be shot from the flanks. And I think going back to that point about in this game, what I have noticed about the maps is that although there are things I would consider power positions in a lot of the maps where you can see huge areas of it, those power positions are often massively exposed from other angles. And I like this and I don't like this. On the one hand, it means that a player can't just get into a corner and rack up kills and call in a helicopter. It means that there's actually a way to counter them if you go around the sides. But on the other hand, especially as someone who really enjoys domination, I have found it where I've been looking at, say, B in the map, and I'm looking at it, I'm moving towards it with my team, and I'm trying to cover all angles, but it's just physically impossible to be looking both in front of you, behind you, to the right. You just can't do it. So you've sort of got to guess at where they're coming from, and mentally you want to say, well, if I'm going to guess of 3 potential avenues, forward, right and back, where are they going to come from? Well, if I just spawned from behind me and ran forward, logically the most likely position they're going to come from is in front of me, and then I get shot in the back. And then next time I go there, my decision making becomes incredibly random because I have to second guess myself a lot, where I say, well, I've just come from that direction, so I probably won't get shot in the back because that's the way I came. But last time I thought that, I did get shot in the back anyway, so it doesn't make sense to look forward. But then again, I'm not judging that based on a rational thought, I'm judging that based on the frequency of previous engagements. And so it's almost like it's a positive and a negative, because your brain has to do so many little calculations as you go towards the flag in domination. And if you don't do those, if you just run for it, it's a little bit of a coin toss, because you can very easily just get shot from any angle. And I think I like this when I'm being very careful and I maneuver very tactically, check my corners and take people out as I'm doing such. However, I don't like it when I feel as if I go and look at every conceivable angle and then get shot from the direction I came in, because I suppose it comes down to a matter of how could anyone have reacted to that, right? It's a little bit of a what is the retaliation? And you can listen out for footsteps if they're close to you, but if behind you there's quite a lot of open space, there's no way of hearing them if they're quite a few feet away from you. So there's a dichotomy there where the maps are so complex, so maze-like, that it can be very tricky to consider every possible avenue every single time. And I went back and analysed a lot of my deaths in the game, because I think it's really important to do that so you can learn from them. Try not to skip kill cams unless it's obvious. And a lot of the time, I can see obviously in hindsight what I could have done to change it, but with foresight, it's difficult to have known what action to have taken to go with one avenue or the other. Should I look left or should I look right? At the time, it was a bit of a coin toss, and unfortunately, I tossed badly. That's always been a thing in Call of Duty I should highlight. Maps have always had multiple avenues for which to take, but they've made the maps so complex in this game that the number of avenues increases, and therefore it becomes increasingly tricky to know exactly where the enemies are. So another interesting topic to talk about is the time to kill in Call of Duty, because here it is incredibly low, which makes sense because this is a game that's trying to have a realistic setting, and realistically in the real world people do go down very quickly when being shot with a gun. So therefore, to match the setting, people should die quickly. I haven't got any issue with that at all. I will say, however, that it takes a little bit of the skill out of actual gunfights, because it means that you don't have to track your opponent for as long. I found that the majority of my fights, guys, if I'm honest, I just pressed L2, snapped to my target, pressed R2, didn't even have to aim, and I took them out because it's so quick, it's so easy. And what this does is move the challenge away from the actual gunfights and into where you are positioning yourself before that gunfight takes place. Are you behind cover? Do you have the drop on your opponent? And that's where the map knowledge will come in. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, because I did like the fact in Black Ops 4 that the time to kill was a little bit higher, because I felt that it meant engagements were a bit more meaningful, that if I got shot from an angle that I simply could not see my enemy, I had a little bit of a chance to move into cover. But here, that's really hard to do. So on balance, it should be low, because the game is trying to be realistic. But me giving my honest opinion as someone just playing the game, I think it takes away something from the experience in doing that. So I suppose another topic I should talk about relatively briefly, I did mention it before, but I'll say it again. It was discovered that supply drops are 100% definitely going to be in this game. Now, we knew this almost for certain before we discovered this. The fact that you got COD points when you pre-ordered the game, the fact that Black Ops 4 was riddled with supply drops, it was almost certain that they would be in the game already. So when I saw that on Twitter and saw that someone had noticed, oh, there are going to be supply drops in the game and they're going to incorporate predatory microtransactions post-launch, my reaction to that, yeah, I know. It's really sad, it's really depressing, because it means even if the game comes out and it's absolutely fantastic, it may be ruined within a few months. It might follow the exact same path as Black Ops 4, where when the game came out, a lot of people forget this, but the game was incredibly well received from a multiplayer standpoint when it came out. It was considered to be very balanced, old school Black Ops, really well enjoyed. And then once the hype had died down, they introduced the microtransactions, and the community who continued to focus and play the game got very annoyed. Some stuck with it. I definitely stuck with it for a bit, but when they introduced that Stingray with the operator mod, I was out, because that was just an embarrassment to whoever put it in. And I expect that fully to happen here again, which is why it's kind of sad. It's like, I suppose it's like thinking of this game as like a holiday, right? It's going to be fun for a bit, but it will end. So in my closing thoughts for this video, my impressions on the beta, weekend 1, they are definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, positive on the whole. But it is a beta, and a critical component of any beta is to give feedback on the aspects that aren't so great, because that's how things improve. And indeed, in the modern world, it's worth doing that even after a game has come out, because of course games are now continually updated even after they've been released. So continuing to give feedback on the game is always a great thing. Just make sure you do it in the most articulate, objective way possible. As always, people, thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.